Hi, happy Tuesday. Hope you're doing well, staying safe, and just enjoying spring because we have about a month left in it until officially summer comes. Wayside School, Beneath the Cloud of Doom. We are going to read chapter 8, which is a chapter very dear to my heart. I wonder if you'll know why when you read the title. Science. I love science. All right, here it goes. 29 hands were raised. There were only 28 kids in Mrs. Jewell's class, but Joy stretched both her arms high in the air. She figured it doubled her chance of being chosen. She waved them back and forth and around in circles. Pick me, begged Bebe. Pick me, Mrs. Jewell urged Calvin, sitting next to Bebe. Sorry, Calvin, you're too heavy, Mrs. Jewell told him, and your toes are too tiny, Bebe. Todd sat behind Joy, but Mrs. Jewell couldn't see him because of Joy's helicopter arms. Okay, Joy, said Mrs. Jewell. Everybody else groaned. Aww. Joy was all smiles. You lose, losers, she said, as she headed toward the door. This week for science, they would be studying clouds. Luckily, Mrs. Jewell's class was on the 30th floor. It was the classroom closest to the sky. Last week, they studied dirt. That wasn't so lucky. By the time they made it down to the ground, science was over, and they had to turn around and trudge back up. Everyone brought their science notebooks and gathered just outside the door by the closet that wasn't there. Mrs. Jewell put her hands around Joy's waist. Alley-oopsie, she called out, and lifted Joy straight up. Joy giggled. This is why Mrs. Jewell hadn't chosen Calvin. He was too heavy for her to lift. Mrs. Jewell set Joy on top of the closet, just above the trapdoor. Just above her, a trapdoor led to the roof. Joy stood on her tiptoes and pushed it open. This is why Mrs. Jewell hadn't chosen Bebe. Her toes weren't long enough. A rope ladder tumbled down. One by one, the children climbed the rope ladder to the roof. Be sure to stay away from the edge, Mrs. Jewell called up to them. There was a safety railing around the edge, but it was for taller people. Mrs. Jewell was afraid her students would slip right under. She was the last one through the trapdoor. When she reached the roof, she saw everyone standing at the edge. What did I just say? She demanded. Everyone stared blankly at her. Alley-oopsie? Asked Daniel. Well, at least someone was paying attention, said Mrs. Jewell. She told everyone to take 2 steps back and to sit on their bottoms. But then we'll be further from the clouds, Matt complained. Sometimes safety is more important, said Mrs. Jewell. She pointed to the clouds out to her class. That one there is a cumulus cloud. Some of the students wrote it down in their notebooks. Bebe drew a picture of a sleeping giant. The cumulus cloud was his pillow. And that's a Sirius cloud over there, said Mrs. Jewell. Bebe drew a picture of flying angels. Hundreds of white feathers had fallen from their wings and swirled into a cloud. Bebe could draw really fast. What kind of cloud is that one, Mrs. Jewell asked Benjamin. He was pointing to a dull, dark cloud way off in the distance. Mrs. Jewell gasped. If Bebe were to draw it, her picture would look exactly like the inside of a vacuum cleaner bag while the vacuum was still on. Bebe had never seen the inside of a vacuum cleaner bag while the vacuum was still on, so she couldn't draw it. Everyone, back to the classroom, said Mrs. Jewell. Double quick. The children scrambled to the trapdoor. Hurry, ordered Mrs. Jewell. Some fell right through. Others got rope burns. Mrs. Jewell didn't worry about little things like that. She was the last one through the hatch. Sitting atop the closet that wasn't there, she tossed the ladder back onto the roof and locked the trapdoor. She climbed down, stepping onto the chains in the steel bar. The children were waiting quietly inside the classroom, hands folded on their desks. Mrs. Jewell walked to the side of the room and looked out the window. Either the cloud was moving closer or it was getting bigger, or both. What kind of cloud is it, Mrs. Jewell asked Leslie. There are times where adults hide the truth from children, so as not to worry them. But Mrs. Jewell was a teacher, and this was science. Take a good look, boys and girls, said Mrs. Jewell, pointing out the window. Then, with a slight tremble in her voice, she said, that is the cloud of doom. The room darkened. So now we're getting to the title of the book. So I guess this is the cloud of doom, and that must be who draws? The artist? Bebe. Okay. So we'll see what kind of effect that has on the children of Wayside School, especially those in Mrs. Jewell's class. All right, ladies and gents, happy Tuesday. Take care.